And the other thing I was thinking about this week, I was thinking about another line in the New Testament. I think it's from the Sermon on the Mount, but I'm not absolutely sure. Christ compares the kingdom of heaven to a mustard seed. And so I was thinking about a mustard seed is a very tiny seed, and it grows into quite a spectacular, complex plant. And I was thinking about how you should operate in the world in order to make it a better place, assuming that that's what you should be doing. And that is what you should be doing. And there's lots in the world to fix. Everything that bothers you about the world and about yourself should be fixed. And you can do that. And my dawning realization, I have a friend. He lives in Montreal. His name is James Simon. He's a great painter. And he's taught me a lot of things. He's helped me design my house and beautify it. And I bought some paintings from him a couple of years ago. And he did this series of paintings where he went around North America and stood in different places. And then he painted the view from here down. And so it's his feet planted in different places, on roads, in the desert, on the ocean. I have one actually hanging over my toilet, which is him standing at a urinal. Yeah, well, he was trying to make a point. And the point was that wherever you are, it's worth paying attention. And that's because, so all these places that he visited, he looked at exactly where he was, standing by the side of the road in the desert. Sort of mundane in some sense, but then maybe he put 40 hours into that painting, and it's very, very realistic painting with really good light. And what he's telling you as a painter is everything is worth paying attention to an infinite amount, but you don't have enough time. And so the artist does that for you, right? The artist looks and looks and looks and looks and looks and then gives you that vision. And so then you can look at the painting and it reminds you that right where you are there's everything that there is right where you are. And that's a hard thing to realize, but it's actually true. And so I've been telling people online in various ways and in lectures that they should start fixing up the world by cleaning up their room. And I wanted to just elaborate on that a little bit before I get back to the lecture itself. So as it's become this weird internet meme, and it's a joke, and good, it's a joke. I'm really happy about the fact that so much of this has got like the leaven of humor in it. It's really important, because that's what stops things from degenerating into conflict, humor. And I was thinking about this idea of cleaning up your room in relationship to the mustard seed idea. And you see, the thing about cleaning up your room, this is also something I learned from Carl Jung and his studies on alchemy, because for Jung, when the alchemist was attempting to make the philosopher's stone, he was not only engaged in the transformation of the material world, but he was engaged in a process of self-transformation that occurred at the same time as the chemical transformation. So it was a psychological work in some sense. Let's say you want to sort out your room and beautify it, because the beauty is also important. And let's say that all you have is just a little room, like you're not rich, you're poor. And you don't have any power, that's another thing. But you've got your damn room, and you've got this space right in front of you, that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. And you might think, well, what's there in front of you, right in front of you? And the answer to that is it depends on how open your eyes are. That's the proper answer, because you could say, and William Blake said this, for example, and Aldous Huxley made comments that were very similar, that in a transcendent state you can see infinity in the finite. And you might say, well, you can see infinity in what you have within your grasp if you look, and you could say maybe that's the case with your room. And so you want to clean up your room. Well, okay, how do you do that exactly? Well, a room is a place to sleep. And so if you set your room up properly, then you figure out how to sleep and when you should sleep and how you should sleep. And then you figure out when you should wake up. And then you figure out, well, what clothes you should wear, because they have to be arranged properly in your dresser. And then you have to have some place to put your clothes. And if you're going to have some clothes, you have to figure out what you're going to wear those clothes to do, right? And then that means you have to figure out what you're going to do. And then your room has to serve that purpose, because otherwise it isn't set up properly. And if it doesn't serve your purposes, you will be unhappy and not happy in the room, because the way that we perceive the world is as a place to move from point A to point B in. And then if the place that we're in facilitates that movement, then we're happy to be there. And if the place that we're in serves as an obstacle to that movement, then we're unhappy to be there. And so what it means to set up your room is that you have to have somewhere to go that's worthwhile, or you can't set up your room, and then your room has to be set up to facilitate that. And then the next thing is, well, maybe you have to make it beautiful. But that's not easy, right? That means you have to have some taste. And that doesn't mean you have to have money. It doesn't, because you can be garish with money, and you can be tasteful with nothing. All you need is taste, and taste beats money when it comes to beautifying things, you know? I mean, not that money is trivial, because it's not, but taste is crucial, and people who are very artistically oriented can make beautiful things out of virtually nothing. And not only that, the literature suggests that if you're going to make beautiful things, putting real constraints on what you allow yourself to do facilitates creativity instead of interfering with it. Because let's say you have to make something out of nothing, right? Which I suppose would be a godly act, right? You have to make something out of nothing. You have to be creative in order to do that. And so then to beautify your room means that you also have to develop your capacity to be creative. And so then you can make your room shine. But then what will happen is that if your family isn't together, they will interfere with that. You'll interfere with that because you won't have the discipline to do it properly. But then when you start building this little microcosm of perfection with what you have at hand, then it'll evoke all the pathologies of everyone in your household. They'll wonder what the hell you're up to in there. And they won't necessarily be happy, because if they're in a lowly place, let's say, and so are you, and you're trying to move out of that, then the higher you move out of that, the more the place they're in looks bad. And you might say, well, what they should do is celebrate your victory over chaos and evil, but that isn't what will happen. What will happen instead is that they will attempt to pull you back down. They'll attempt to, and I mean, obviously all families don't do that, but all families do that to some degree, and some families do almost nothing but that. And so what that means is that if you're going to organize your room, then you're going to have to confront the devils in your house, and that's often a terrifying thing, because some of those devils have lineages that go back many, many, many generations, and God only knows what you have to struggle with in order to overcome that. And so to sort yourself out and to fix up your room is a non-trivial matter, you know, and you can do that. You'll learn by doing that, and then maybe you'll learn enough by doing that so that you can fix up your family a little bit, and then having done that, you'll have enough character so that when you try to operate in the world at your job, or maybe in the broader social spheres, that you'll be a force for good instead of harm, because you'll have learned some humility by noting just how difficult it was to put your damn room together, well, and yourself for that matter. And so you'll proceed cautiously with your eyes open towards the good. And so, well, those are some of the things I've been thinking about this week, and they're germane. They're germane to what we're going to discuss tonight, because what happens at the beginning of the Abrahamic stories is basically God comes to Abraham and just says, go. Get going, man. Do something. Get going. And you might think, well, where should I go? And God is somewhat vague about that, and where he sends Abraham, it's a real fixer-upper, man. It's like there's starvation there, and there's tyranny, and there's marital dissolution, and there's deceit. Like it's just like where you live, you know. It's exactly the same thing. It's tyranny and catastrophe. So that's, you know, the tyrannical great father, because Abraham ends up having to sojourn in Egypt, and there's a famine, and so Mother Nature is on the rampage, and Abraham lies about his wife, as we'll see. And so it's the world. It's tyranny and vulnerability and deceit. And yet God says, go, because if you do go, then you'll become a father of nations. And you think, well, again, that's pretty good news, although it's strange, because you'd expect that if God chose Abraham, then he'd send him immediately to the land of honey, land of milk and honey, and that isn't what happens at all. It doesn't happen at all, and Abraham never gets there. But his mission is still regarded as divine, and thank God for that, because that's what your mission will be, because that's what you will encounter in your life. Those are the archetypal things everyone encounters: the tyranny of the social structure, and the rapaciousness of nature, and the deceitful quality of the human psyche. It's like that's the world. Now, that's a negative view in some sense, but it's positive in the story, because what it basically says is something that's akin to the Sermon on the Mount, which is that if you're aligned with God and you pay attention to the divine injunction, then you can operate in the midst of chaos and tyranny and deception and flourish. And you could hardly hope to have a better piece of news than that, given that that's exactly where you are. So, and I didn't see any of that in the Abrahamic stories to begin with, so it's been very interesting to have that sort of reveal itself. The Abraham section thus develops the personality and character of a man to a new degree in biblical narrative, while picturing him in a new degree of responsibility. In him, a new degree of responsibility. So here's the other thing that's really struck me, and I think this is of absolutely crucial importance, and I don't know how much importance, but it's certainly important to me. One of the things that has just blown me away in the last year, because I've talked to lots of people live, but also lots of people online, but it's more obvious live, and it's obvious in this theater as well, is that I've gone around and spoken, and a large proportion of my audience has been young men, under 30, something like that. And I've spoken to them a lot about responsibility. And what's so odd about this is that of all the things that I've spoken about, because I can see the audience and I can feel how the audience is reacting, because I'm always paying attention to all of you insofar as I can manage that. So I get some sense of how what I'm saying is landing, which you have to do if you're going to speak effectively to people. And what happens is, if I talk about responsibilities, everyone is silent, just like they are now. Silent and not moving, right? Focusing, attentive. Say, pick up your responsibility. Pick up the heaviest thing you can and carry it. And the room goes quiet and everybody's eyes open. And I think, that always makes me break up. I don't know why. I was speaking to an English journalist today who was going to write an article in Spectator magazine, and I was talking about this, and at the same point in the discussion, I had the same emotional reaction. I don't really understand it. I think there's something about it that's so crucial, because we've been fed this unending diet of rights and freedoms, and there's something about that, there's something about that that's so pathologically wrong, and people are starving for the antidote, and the antidote is truth and responsibility, right? And it isn't because that's what you should do in some I know better or someone knows better for you what you should do sense. It's that's the secret to a meaningful life, and without a meaningful life, then all you have is suffering.